listen, Congresswoman Omar has been in trouble for these anti-Semitic remarks. It's put the Democrats in disarray this week. But now it sounds like, although she's denying it, that she's been, taking some hits at former President Barack Obama. And obviously he's very beloved among Democrats. In Vanity Fair, they say this: Democrats didn't abandon Omar over her comments about Israel. Her criticism of Barack Obama is another matter. For some, those comments may prove to be more incendiary. Vince?
Can you imagine criticizing President Obama is going to be more incendiary than saying something anti-Semitic in the end for the Democratic Party? I mean, there's something sort of humorous. If this wasn't so crazy, it would be very humorous. Over the last week, the Democratic Party scrambled to completely defend Congresswoman Omar and to basically forgive her sins, and sort of repeatedly suggesting that people have dual loyalty to the United States and Israel, that people are hypnotized by Israel's sort of anti-Semitic tropes she keeps trotting out and then asking for forgiveness for. And now she attacks President Obama, and perhaps the worst way possible as a Democrat, by suggesting that, well, he's basically President Trump, but he had a pretty smile and a nice face.
Yeah, there's some backlash tonight. Again, she's backpedaling on that, but she's produced tape. The reporter says he stands by it and he's got his own tape, and it pretty much sounds like the way that she was quoted and in context. In the Free Beacon, Matthew Continetti writes this: Democrats are tripping over themselves, making rationalizations, dodging reality, and trying to clean up this anti-Semitic mess. Kevin, why is she getting such a pass from so many in the Democrat Party?
Yeah, sure, Shannon. I got to tell you, as a Democrat, I am so sick and tired of hearing Congresswoman Omar this week because it's such a distraction from, rightly you pointed out at the outset, the passage of the largest election reform bill today, some terrifying economic news in terms of our job report. But I got to say, I think you saw a united Democratic Party in that House caucus. Every single member voted to condemn any kind of anti-Semitism in terms of the way they operate in the Hill. I think you're seeing senior leadership pull her aside, that she is not a state representative in Minnesota anymore. She's on the world stage, and that her words need to be taken very much into consideration when she's making them, and to make sure that we are standing completely with our partners in Israel and condemning any kind of hateful speech that this representative is speaking.
And so, Rob, last night, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said that she and Congresswoman Omar and Tlaib are being targeted as freshman women of color. She says they're getting unfair treatment, and that if you went after every bad thing that a congressman or woman did on the Hill, that everybody in Congress basically would be in trouble. Fair?
I don't think that's fair at all, Shannon. First of all, I just want to note it's remarkable and startling how much Ilhan Omar, frankly, the disdain she has for the country, that we should note. It's the country that has given her family and herself refuge. She escaped war-torn Somalia, was a refugee in Kenya for 4 years, and then, thanks to a Lutheran church group, was able to ultimately immigrate to the United States. And I, as an immigrant myself, I have to note this constant disdain of her portrayal of the United States and its anti-terror policies under successive administrations, treating it as this sort of murderous country that cages children at the border and drones people, and not any similar criticism, I would say, of the Islamist groups, among them those that have turned Somalia, her homeland, into such a horrible place. Not one word of criticism, as far as I can tell. It's only directed at the country that has given her and her family refuge. It's not a perfect country, but I think it's startling, and it's, frankly, it's disgusting.
Well, Kevin, as you said, it has overshadowed something big that happened today with Democrats, which was passing H.R. 1. It's got the number one on the bill because it is their priority, and it's a massive sweep of talking about campaign finance reform and transparency. And I want to tell a little bit about it and then get you each to weigh in. Even the ACLU hates this thing. Here's what they say: that it will have the effect of harming our public discourse by silencing necessary votes that would otherwise speak out. Voices that would otherwise speak out about the public issues of the day. They're teaming up with Mitch McConnell. I mean, I don't know how different that you could be. If I can have you each weigh in. I mean, it not only is going to force donors to disclose, but also there are going to be matching funds where taxpayers are going to have to pay for, essentially subsidize a lot of campaigns out there. So, Kevin, to you first.
Yeah, Shannon, I mean, the vast majority of Americans in this country want campaign finance reform. They supported McCain-Feingold earlier in the 2000s.
Omar says the hope and change offered by Barack Obama was a mirage. recalling the caging of kids at the border and the droning of countries around the world, both on Mr. Obama's watch. She says he operated within the same broken framework as his Republican successor. Quote, "We can't be only upset with Trump. His policies are bad, but many of the people who came before him also had really bad policies. They just were more polished than he was. We don't want anybody to get away with murder because they are polished. We want to recognize the actual policies that are behind the pretty face and the smile." Omar responds on Twitter, quote, "Exhibit A of how reporters distort words. I am an Obama fan. I was saying how Trump is different from Obama and why we should focus on policy, not politics. This is why I always tape my interviews." Speaking of Omar and Ocasio-Cortez, another Democratic Congressman, Dean Phillips, tells Politico, quote, "Suddenly an entire party is being branded by the perspectives of two of its members who represent 1% of the caucus."
Welcome to the latest example of why people are turned off on politics. House Resolution 183. No need to argue a case to you tonight. All you need to know is the path this thing took. So it starts with Representative Omar, Democrat from Minnesota. She said things about Jews buying friends and influence on Israeli issues. People in both parties went after her for it. Omar admitted she crossed the line. Then she said more about the political influence in this country that says it's okay to push for allegiance to foreign countries. Again, many in both parties took this to imply American lawmakers had dual loyalty to the U.S. and Israel. Now there was a big fight about calling her out. Then came the comparative politics. When it was Steve King saying bigoted things, the Democrats wanted him tossed out, named him in a resolution condemning white supremacy. And the GOP, to their credit, they came late to the game on King, but they did strip him of assignments. However, when it was a Democrat, the Dems got quiet. Some Dems didn't like it, so they drafted this Resolution 183 to condemn anti-Semitism as a middle ground consequence. But no naming of Omar and no loss of assignments. They argued that King has been saying this stuff for years, so he deserved worse, though Omar had made statements like this before. This should have been simple. Either people who say ugly things get called out or they don't. Then, the Congressional Black Caucus and the Congressional Progressive Caucus didn't like the res being suggestive of only what Omar said. This president's vitriol had to be included. So they included Islamophobia and white supremacy, whereasing, those paragraphs, whereasing instances that were clear references to the president. And then on top of that, Speaker Pelosi said this.
I thought the resolution should be enlarge the issue to anti-Semitism, anti-Islamophobia, etc., anti-white supremacist, and that it should not mention her name. And that's what we're working on, something that is one resolution addressing these forms of hatred, not mentioning her name, because it's not about her. It's about these forms of hatred.
So what started out as a reaction to Omar was now not about Omar. Pelosi went even farther, saying that the comments that prompted the resolution against anti-Semitic speech were not intended by Omar to be anti-Semitic. So now the only people named in the dozens of graphs of whereases are Dr. King for teaching us that persecuting any American is attacking the freedom of all, and a